Got Jonathan Davis checking in from Locked On Longhorns, and we appreciate Jonathan being here. How's it going today?
It's going great. The second day of the real Arch Madness. I'm like, let me in here, man. I'm sitting backstage. You're talking about what Arch not going to do. I'm like, let me in here so I can talk about it. But it's going good in Longhorn Nation.
Who was talking about what he's not going to do?
You are talking about. I just don't see how he's going to live up to the expectations. So
I didn't say that.
We'll see. What'd you say?
That didn't come out of my mouth.
What'd you say, Mark?
I didn't.
You said I don't. You said I don't see how he lives. You didn't just say that.
No.
Oh, okay. My bad. I'm sorry. I was listening too hard.
I'm not making any predictions on Arch Manning's success. That's not me. I make a lot of predictions on certain things, but I've never seen him throw. I don't think I've seen him throw a pass. I saw a scramble on Twitter that people were making fun of because he looked like he was playing a bunch of seventh graders. But besides that, I've not seen him throw one pass. So I would not be making any evaluation. Is it going to be difficult to live it depends what the expectations are. If you're the number one quarterback, take his name off. And just if he's the number one quarterback in the country, then yeah, those are really high expectations. You put the name on him, are the expectations he's going to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame someday? Well, those are, I would bet against that today. Not saying that that's not achievable, but the odds are obviously stacked against him if you're going to raise it to that level.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about the pedigree that he comes from, and I was trying to think of who would rival them as the most successful sports family. And I mean, you're right. It probably starts and ends with the Mannings at the top when you talk about, 4 Super Bowls, possibly 2 Hall of Fames and all of that. Oh, we got to get Locked On Longhorns, not Hooked on Longhorns. It is Hook 'em though.
Oh, my bad.
But no, it's all good. It's all good. But like you said, it starts with the expectations at Texas. And I think it goes either way. I think if Quinn Ewers is the quarterback that he was supposed to be over the next couple of years, and Sark is able to get it together with all of the talent they have, then you're looking for Arch to say, okay, well, you have to sustain this or take it to the next level. And then if Quinn Ewers doesn't, have the success that people thought he would have at Texas, and Texas doesn't reach necessarily that next level, obviously they probably won't go 5-7 again. But if they hover around 7 to 9 wins over the next 2 years, then you're going to say, okay, Arch, you're the quarterback to come in and takes this to the next level, take Texas to a college football playoff team. And then that Texas is one of the biggest brands in college football. It's a team that people love to see fail. And so you're going to have that aspect. And then because of the hype, hype creates hate. And because Arch is the most hyped recruit ever, he's going to be one of the most hated players ever, just because he went to Texas and people are going to want to see him fail. And so you have that riding as well. And so he's at a school that he has to produce at, and Arch can't go out there and fail because there's so much riding on it. So you're right about the expectations and whether he'll be able to live up to them. I think on the college level, I'm not worried about that. When you start talking about will he live up to the NFL legacy of his family, I think that's a different conversation and one I won't concern myself with. But in college, I think he's definitely built for it.
Jason, anything you want to hit Jonathan up concerning Texas football? Jonathan and I have gotten together here a couple times in the last week, so I'll let you roll with it.
No, I think, just to our further conversation about Arch, I mean, I think it's just, like I said, it's impossible to know exactly how good this kid's going to be, right? There's so much hype surrounding one kid, and, the fact that obviously it's a huge get for the University of Texas, but I mean, I think he's got unbelievable amount of pressure on him to be good from, really kind of from day one. But I think to your point, so just kind of looking at the outlook of what this Texas team looks like next year, right? With Quinn Ewers as the starting quarterback, probably, right? I mean, I think everybody assumes that he's going to be the guy. What makes this team different than this 5-7 team a year ago?
Well, I've maintained, I'm going to say this again. I said it on my podcast when Mark joined me. I know Mark's going to argue. But I said that this wasn't a 5-win football team last year. It's a team that had 5 wins. When you look at it, obviously, the huge lead they had on Oklahoma. They had a lead on Oklahoma going into the fourth quarter. They had a lead on Baylor going into the fourth quarter. They had a lead on Oklahoma State going into the fourth quarter. And those were the 3 teams at the top of the Big 12. Now, like Mark likes to say, we don't end the games at halftime. We don't end the games after the third quarter. And obviously, they folded in all of those games. But I don't think that this was a 5-win team last year. I think that the culture was off. The energy was off, and Sark wasn't able to really put his handprint on this football team last year. And I just think that it was a broken football team. And that's what happens when you go out there and go 5-7. There were some talent deficiencies on the team, but it was still Texas. It was still had enough talent to not be 5-7. I think when you look at it, I've talked about the defense. I think the defense was lacking last year. This is the first time in 4 years that Texas will have the same defensive system for 2 years in a row. They had 3 straight defensive coordinators. They returned Pete Kwiatkowski, also bring in Gary Patterson, special assistant to the head coach. He's working with the defense specifically on the back end. And when I look at Texas, I think that they're the rare team in college football, especially in the Big 12, that can say they've gotten better at literally every positional unit from the year before. They got better at quarterback. If you're telling me Quinn Ewers is going to start over Hudson Card, even if they didn't get better at running back, Bijan is the best in the nation. They got better at receiver, and they're already returning Xavier Worthy, bringing in Ajay Hall and Isaiah Nair. They got better at tight end, bringing in Jaleel Billingsley. They got better on the offensive line, bringing in the 2 top linemen in the class, 6 blue chips out of 7 offensive linemen in the class. They got better on the D-line, bringing in 8 defensive linemen in that 5th-ranked 2022 recruiting class. They got better at linebacker with another year of development of DeMarvion Overshawn, transferring from safety to linebacker, also bringing in one of the best players in college football last year, although at James Madison, Diamante Tucker Dorsey in the transfer portal. And then you look at the DB, they brought in two really talented corners in the recruiting class that are going to play this year, also bringing in Ryan Watts from Ohio State to start at that cornerback position as well. So, like I said, there isn't many teams in the nation that you could say outside of Texas got better at literally every positional unit, but the Texas Longhorns did, albeit with their second year in the system under Pete Kwiatkowski, albeit in their second year under Steve Sarkisian. And that's why Texas is going to be different this year, because it's a different year under the same coach, a different year under the same defensive coordinator, different energy, different culture around the football team, and have got better at literally every positional unit, as I just described.
I completely agree. I think they're an 8-4 football team. I think they've improved. They've improved considerably. They've improved considerably. I'm just kidding. We had a back and forth about the over under being at 8 there. So I think they're remarkably improved. And like you say, I totally get your point, Jonathan, that they were not a 5-win team. You know, You are what your record is. Yes. Yeah. But the talent is so much better even before all these upgrades than 5 wins. Absolutely. And like I told you, I watched the Baylor game. I watched Iowa State. I watched Oklahoma State. I watched Oklahoma. And it was like, well, they're better than this. They're better than their record. They're competing with all these teams deep into the second half and figuring out ways to blow the game. But from a talent perspective, from just watching the flow of the game, they're right there. Sure.
Yeah. So I actually want to ask you a question, not you, Mark, but, and I apologize, I don't know if I got your name yet, but I want to ask you a question because Oklahoma, it feels like it's kind of given, you know, it's a year where there's no clear-cut favorite in the Big 12, and that's why I think this is the year for Texas to seize that opportunity. When you talk about, at least our partners at BetOnline had Oklahoma State, Baylor, Texas, and Oklahoma all hovering at 8.5 wins. But they also have Oklahoma. Most people have Oklahoma favored to win the Big 12. And it kind of feels like a benefit of the doubt pick, you know, because there's no real concrete favorite. So it's like, let's go with the historical favorite in Oklahoma, who's bringing in a new head coach, bringing in a new quarterback. I can't say they got better at any of the skill positions. If I'm wrong, you know, feel free to let me know. But why is Oklahoma the favorite to win the Big 12 going into the season? And I'm not saying they shouldn't be. I just want some education.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, I think a lot of it is just the benefit of the doubt, right? I think Oklahoma's been the been the best team in this league for the last 5 or 6 years. Obviously, not last year with standing, but I think to your point, there's a lot of unquestioned, a lot of answers that are. A lot of questions that haven't been answered right now, right? I mean, there's a lot of change on this defensive staff. There's a lot of change, obviously, at the head coaching position. There's a lot of changes. I think Oklahoma is going to be a much better defensive team this year. I think just looking at that coming in, I think there's a lot of newness on the offense and the defensive side of the ball. And I think it's very interesting this year looking at Oklahoma. It's a different proposition than they've had in any year in the past in terms of it's a college football playoff prediction. This is a top 5 team coming into the year, where it's not really that the same thing this year. To your point, Oklahoma's the pick, but they're very right there along with very clearly right there, along with Texas, Oklahoma State, and Baylor, as the the 1A, B, C, and D, if you will, within this conference. And I think, as has been the case over the last few years, this team is only going to go as far as their defense is going to take them. Right. I think the offense will be, in my opinion, I think the offense will be fine. I don't know that it's going to be. It's probably not going to be Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray fine, but I think it's going to be good enough to win a Big 12 championship. Can they get better on the defensive side of the ball is the big question. And I think with the coaching staff that they've brought in, some of the players that they've brought in, I think the hope and the desire, obviously, for Oklahoma fans is just to see that improvement. And I think, as you see, this team may not be a great defensive team early on in the year, but I think you'll see them get better and better as the season goes on. And I think it's very interesting. I think, looking at both Oklahoma and Texas early on, they both have really big non-conference games. Oklahoma's is obviously certainly not as tough, but on the road, brand new team, brand new coach, against Nebraska versus Alabama coming to Austin. Two totally different. But I think at the same time, both of these programs have an opportunity to announce themselves to the college football world with, I think, in Texas doesn't necessarily have to win that game, but if they are very competitive in that game against Alabama, I think they can announce to the world. Maybe, I know the "we are back" situation always seems to come, but if they're able to be competitive in that game, and then if Oklahoma on the other side of it, if they go into Nebraska and they win that game, no matter how convincingly or not, then I think you have something to look forward to in terms of, hey, this is a team that could still battle for the Big 12.
I'll tell you this, Jonathan, if somebody just laid out the rosters and I didn't know what happened last year, that was completely stricken from everyone's memory, what happened last year, and you took the head coaches off the teams and said, these are the rosters in the Big 12, I would probably say Texas is the best roster in the Big 12.
I mean, it depends on how you feel about the defense, but just looking at the offense, there's no comparison. I mean, when you look at Texas's third and fourth receivers, their second and third running backs, their second tight end, I mean, there's just no comparison to that offense in the Big 12. And I mean, you're talking about maybe top 5 offense in the country, at least on paper. So, yeah, I agree with you, but Texas has been able to say that before. This is not the first year that they've been able to say it. And so it just all comes down to, production on the field. I think that it'll come this year, but as you said on my podcast, this year isn't the first time I've thought that, So, yeah, I definitely think they have the best roster in the Big 12, but all that does is win you preseason awards.
Yeah, so your expectation is what, to get to a Big 12 championship game?
Yes, I think they need to be in the Big 12 championship game. I think there's no clear favorite in the Big 12 this year. I've been on record as saying that I think Oklahoma and Texas end up in the Big 12 championship game, a la 2018. And I just think that, yeah, they need to be one of the teams in the Big 12 championship game. All of the Texas fans, they get mad when I say Texas is back, and they say don't say that and it's toxic. But nothing I'm saying affects what the players do on the field. And my expectation for them is this is an 8. I think even 8 is a disappointment. I think this is a 9-win football team. Like I said, I just outlined it. They got better at every position. Literally every position group got better. And so why is this not, you could talk about the Alabama loss. That doesn't affect them in the conference. Why? There's no reason this team should not be in the Big 12 championship game. We look at Baylor last year, who won it. 2020 was a little bit of a weird season, but Baylor won 2 games in 2020 and came back and won the Big 12 championship. Why can't Texas, with all the talent they have, win 5 games and come back and win the Big 12? This isn't the NFL where it takes years to build. This is college football. I mean, look at USC. You can literally, I guess this is probably the wrong time to bring up USC, but you can literally rebuild a college program over a summer. And it's hard to say that Sark hasn't had one of the best off seasons in college football out of any coach, and there was already talent on the roster. And so I just think bringing all of that back, 9 wins should be the floor, and they should be competing for a Big 12 championship. I'm not like most Texas fans that think this thing is going to take 2-3 years to build, because I've seen it happen at other programs. It doesn't. This Texas team is ready to win now, and they need to go out and do it.
Anything else, Jason?
No, I just can't wait to get started. The it's always the longest time of the year going through, kind of the end of spring here into summer. I'm just ready to get it started. It's going to be a really exciting year.
Yeah, I'll say I love baseball, so this time is always fun for me. I can just kind of sit back and watch some baseball, but of course, it's that pre-waiting for football, and I'm talking about the Longhorns every day. I'm convincing people like Mark all over the world that the Longhorns will be back, and this isn't the same old Texas. So I'm ready for these checks. I've been writing to start cashing in September, so we'll see. But hey, October 8th, man, we can be friends every day, but October 8th, we got to get some get back on the Oklahoma Sooners, man.
I hear you.